So, welcome everyone. We'll begin every class, as I mentioned once before, with a grounding practice. It's not going to be something new, it will be something you already learned. Purpose is to settle our minds as we arrive from whatever we've been doing before, and also practice. So, it gives us kind of a twofer, we get both, and we'll do that today. So, if you'd please make yourselves very comfortable in whatever you're sitting on, and perhaps just sway a little back and forth and get yourself centered and comfortable and kind of sink in to wherever you are. If you would please, on the next in-breath, you can leave your eyes open if that feels most comfortable to you, or allow your eyes to gently close. And on the next in-breath, please breathe in through your nostrils if you're able, and notice the sensation of the air as it enters your nostrils on the in-breath. Go. Let the out-breath take care of itself. Drop your attention into your body. Notice the sensation of the support of the chair beneath you. Again, the most important thing you can do here is notice the physical sensations. You don't really need to do anything else. So let's try it again. So when you're ready, breathe out normally and breathe in through your nostrils. Notice the physical sensation of the air as it enters your nostrils on the in-breath. Go. Out-breath takes care of itself. Drop your attention into your body. Notice the physical sensation of the support of the chair. Let your attention just rest here for a second. Just notice how you feel physically, and notice how your emotions feel. They may have settled a little bit, quieted a little as you've done this, or not, but notice it if it's there for you. And then I'd like to switch to the counted breath and do it a little differently this time, just for the fun of trying a different iteration. So I'm going to ask you to breathe in for 4, hold it for 7, and then breathe out for 8. That's a very long count. If you're uncomfortable with any of it, either skip it or skip that part of it, or give it a try and see how it works. So I'll do the counting. We'll just do about 3 breaths this particular way. So just take your time, take a deep breath, let your breath out. When you're ready, breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Slow out breath, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll do it 2 more times. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, 3, 4, out, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just relax. So go ahead and put your hand over your heart if that's comfortable for you, just to remind yourself to place your attention there. And breathe in. We're not counting anything, just breathe in normally. Notice your chest expanding on the in-breath. And when you breathe out, notice your chest relaxing. And imagine that you could breathe into your heart or your heart area on the in-breath, and that you could breathe out from the heart or the heart area on the out-breath. Do 2 or 3 more breaths just like that at your own rhythm, your own pace. It doesn't matter how fast or slow, it doesn't matter a bit. Just pretend or imagine you could breathe into your heart area, out from your heart area, into your heart area. And then drop your hand and drop the image, if you will. And I'd like you to, from this quiet place, reflect back on your week, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You don't need to remember in detail anything. Just consider if you got the opportunity, whether you did it or not, whether you had the opportunity to notice a difficult emotion and name it, or the opportunity to try out one of the grounding practices. And I think the most important thing is noticing if you had the opportunity. And then if you did it, how did it feel? Or if you didn't remember at all, you had the opportunity but didn't think of it. I find that's such a useful thing to realize, because that can help you go, oh my gosh, when I was talking to my brother, it would have been helpful if I tried that. So next time I'm talking to him, I'll try to remember. So I really, really like the noticing. So our topic today is positive intentions for the greater good, I sometimes call it, or purpose beyond self, or including self. That's okay too, if it's for the good. There are a couple of general comments I want to make about it, and then we'll just jump in. So first, very simple statement, but I think it's so interesting. It's actually one of those big ones that sounds simple. There are two things. There's what's happening. Well, we all know that. And there's how we relate to it. Okay. So it's a lot of times, usually, in fact, we have no choice about what's happening. What's happening is happening. Sometimes we have a little bit of a choice, but not often we don't. The one thing we have a bit of choice in is how we relate to what's happening. There's a quote from a name, you may know this gentleman's name or not. It's Viktor Frankl. He's, I see some nods, so some people certainly do, some may not be familiar with his name, but he was a survivor of the Nazi prison camps. He was Austrian. He's no longer living. He was a psychiatrist and a neurologist. How's that for a good combination? Most of his family perished, in the death camps. It was a terrible thing, but he came out and he was able to be whole, not to be completely destroyed by the experience. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's an old book, but part of it chronicles his experience, and part of it talks about how he chose to relate to it. So if that interests you, it's an old book, it's a small book, and it's in your resources. But there's one quote that's often repeated, and I love this one. And I don't have the exact words in front of me now, but it's something like this: the last of the human freedoms, the only one that no one can take away from us, is our freedom to choose our attitude, which I translate as how we relate to what's happening. But that's the one thing no one else can take away from us. It's our choice. Sometimes I feel like I don't have a choice about that, but in fact, to some degree, I do. So I just think it's worth reflecting on that. So I'd like to jump into the subject of positive intentions. I'm going to show you 3 simple ways that you might wish to access that idea. One of them is just remembering your greater intention. We'll talk about that in a moment. The second one is going to be a little exercise you can do on a daily basis where you set a positive intention that is associated with one of your highest values. And then I'll explain how you would use that during the day if you wish to. And the third one is making up a positive intention for a potentially challenging interaction that you expect you might have in the next couple of days or weeks. And it's kind of a fun one that you can play with. So a couple of the facts. Studies have shown that positive intentions beyond self can be beneficial physically as well as emotionally. And I will say that again because I think it's a message we generally don't hear. I think most people are not aware of this. But there are studies that show that our positive intentions, our intentions for the greater good, our staying connected with why we care, why we're doing something, that's beneficial for us. I would expect it would be beneficial for us emotionally. Why not? Of course. I would not have expected it would be beneficial for us physically. And I think I just touched on that last time. But the fact is, they found that it is. So I think that's fascinating. Means that there's a little bit of a way to balance the negative difficulties of caregiving. There are all the difficult things where we might be exhausted, we might be frustrated, we might be angry, we might be sad. And there also is this beneficial side of some strengthening of us because of how we care. But we can lose sight of that because we get too busy. If we're too busy running to doctor's appointments every minute, too busy giving medications, changing. I won't go into all the reasons why we get too busy because all of you know them. But I think they can distract us from why we really care. And I think it's worth recalling it, even in a very simple way. So I particularly think it's important because I worry about the social messages that we get. Oh, you're a caregiver. You're so wonderful. This is going to make you sick. Excuse me? Telling me that is not helpful to me. But if I don't realize there are two sides, that I can balance this a little, it can be damaging. So we want to be sure that we have access to both. So the important thing is to find some balance and peace in the middle of a lot of stuff that's hard. So I would say every one of us knows why we're really here. We know why we care. It might be because I'm going to give you some examples, and they're very different kinds of examples. They'll be different for every one of us. It might be because we've been madly in love with this person for the last 50 years. Who knows? Maybe that's the reason. Or we used to be. Maybe things have changed so much that we don't remember that for sure, but we were, and that's why we're here. Certainly there are practical reasons. I'm here because I have no choice. That's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about why do we care? Maybe it's because there was a grandparent that was very loving that took care of us when we were a child, and that inspired us, and it made us realize that we want to be able to give that kind of care. So maybe just remembering our grandmother, might be helpful. Maybe it's helpful to remember when we got engaged to the person that we wound up marrying. Maybe it's helpful to what is it that helps us access this? So I think we know it, we just forget. And I'd like you to take a few moments to remember that yourself. And this is not a one and done question. I would say this is a question you can continue to ask yourself always. You may find different things arise for you at different times, but it's a good question. Why am I really here? What is it? Why am I here? Why do I care? So I'd like you to bring to mind, just for fun, bring to mind a time in your past when you cared for someone else. It could be the same person you're caring for now, or someone else from your past, from maybe a baby you took care of, or maybe a parent of yours or a grandparent you took care of. And just remember the quality of your care and how it felt inside your emotions when you cared. What was that? Was it your love? I've had people say all different kinds of things. I had one gentleman say, he looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" And he was caring for someone with a very difficult sort of dementia. And then he said, really, it's because of love. It's definitely a sense of duty, but it's my love. That's why. And someone else said it was because of their 50 years of marriage. Someone else said it was the grandparent. Someone else said it was their religion, that they had been taught and they believed that that's how we should be with each other. We should care for one another. And that really inspired and helped them. Someone else said it was their ethical convictions. Someone else said it was a word. It was kindness. It's one of their highest values, something they felt was important. I had a nurse at Stanford say, it's love, unconditional love, giving and receiving. That was her most important reason. Someone else said it's compassion. Someone else said it's because the other person's just like me. I would call that common humanity, but it was that sense of how we're all human and we want to care about each other. So you don't need all these words. What I'd like you to do for a moment is just allow your eyes to gently close or your gaze to drop if you prefer. And think of a time when you were giving or receiving care, but perhaps focusing on giving, because that's what I'm asking you to consider right now. And see if you can think of the situation that came up for you at the time you were offering this care. Picture the person you were caring for. It could be the present time and the person you're caring for now, or again, sometime in your past. And if you were asked the question, why are you really here? Beneath all the things that you're doing to offer this care, what is it in your heart that inspires you and really helps you to be here and be present? And just allow yourself to consider if there's a person, a phrase, or a core belief or value that helps you with remembering this. And once you do, see if you can reduce what you're remembering to a word or a couple of words. And here's a very simple way of practicing it that you can do on a breath. You don't need to walk out of the room and sit on a meditation cushion. So this is something you do while you're right in the middle of life. So take a breath in right now. And when you're breathing in, I'd like you to ask yourself, why am I really here? And the caregiving that you're giving now for the person that you're caring for that has cancer. Why am I really here? And see if you can then, on the out breath, say the word that you came up with that captures this idea of why you're really here, why you care, why you want to be caring. Look how fast that was. Let's try it again on the next in-breath. Breathe in. Why am I really here? Breathe out. And just silently in your own mind, say a word or even yes, because of that. That's my word. That's my reason. Yeah. So look how quickly you could ground yourself and then recall your intention. So let's try both of those. So for a moment, just try breathing in, and this time, noticing the sensation of the air entering your nostrils on the in-breath. Go. And on the out-breath, notice the sensation of the support of the chair. Now on the next in-breath, ask yourself, why am I really here? And on the next out-breath, oh yes, that's why, whatever your word is. And just as you're sitting here, and you can release those images and open your eyes if you like, or just sit there with it if you prefer. But as you're doing this, just realize that this is such a great way to reset your compass. It's so easy. I don't know about you, but in my life as a caregiver, I get so distracted is the word I used before, and I think it's true. I get so distracted and busy and worried about how am I going to get my guy ready to get to the doctors on time. I mean, that's all I'm thinking about. That's it. Or how am I going to get him to do, in his case, because as I think I shared with you, my husband has early stage Alzheimer's. So there's a level of cognitive impairment there. And I'm trying to encourage or get him to do something I think he needs to do. But I think we all do that. We do that with people with any illness. And we get distracted by those. But what happens if we take a breath in and remember this, and take a breath out and just affirm it? And then do all the busy things we need to do. I'm not saying don't do them, they're still important. But it's brought us back to connection with what matters. What matters and why does it matter? I mean, it's so important. That's what gets us through. That's what we need to have in our hearts on some level. So I really would encourage and ask you, try it out. See what it's like. Or if you're not able to do it in a moment, just do it when you're quiet by yourself. Or do it when you're in the kitchen before you walk into the room with your person. You don't need to do it while you're there with them. While you're with them, you're busy. You're doing all the things you're doing. You're talking to them. But see if you can allow yourselves to remember this. And again, it's not a one and done answer. You may have a different answer one day to another day. So that's the one I wanted to spend the most time on because I think it's such a really important one. And I mentioned the benefit to us physically. I find that to be almost comical and funny. You gotta be kidding. This is not going to be good for me physically. And yet, it's so interesting. In your resources this week, you will find two things that I would suggest you take a peek at. One of them you may want to spend less time on. It's an article that is a little bit technical, I would say. If you're someone that likes that sort of thing, you're an academic and you like to read peer-reviewed journal articles, you can read it. But it has to do with this idea, the same idea, and you might like to dip into that. The other is a video by a gentleman named Steve Cole. It is a brief video, but it's not 2 minutes, it's 14 minutes. So you'd have to know, okay, I've got 14 minutes, I can sit here and listen to this right now if I want to. It's a clip from a lecture that he gave to a lot of scientists. And it's about the science of compassion. But in this particular case, he's talking about just what we've been doing. He's talking about the benefit of our care, of the way we care, of being aware of our care. It's quite interesting that he's talking about things that are scientific, that are, frankly, are way over my head. Some of you here, I didn't ask you, some of you may be scientists, and you're going, well, of course, I love hearing about genetic transcription factors. But, for me, that's a bit wonky to me. So although Steve's talk, when you first start listening to it, he's still funny when you listen to him. He's my favorite geeky, funny guy to listen to or watch. But it's a part of this video, and I think it's quite fascinating. I would say the punchline comes toward the end. So even if you find it a little bit technical in the beginning, see if you can watch for the whole 14 minutes, because then he shows the results of the studies. And I think it's quite fun to see that. The other thing that I put into your resources, or one of the other things, are some articles about the benefits of caregiving. And again, I think that is so important for us to understand exists, because we don't hear that message. We just don't. I can't tell you how often I've heard people, it's not that they mean badly. People generally mean well. They want to help caregivers be healthy. And they say, I really think you're working so hard at this. This is going to make you sick. And what you should do, you really need to join your gym. You need to walk around the block. You need to get out and see your friends. It's great. I think all of that's true, but we may not have the time or even the interest right now in doing it. If we think that this caregiving will do nothing but harm us, I think it's bad for us. So we need to know, guess what? It can also help us. It can also be sustaining and supportive and make us a better person somehow. These are good things to realize. So take a look at those articles. They're quite interesting. I think you'll enjoy them. I'd be curious to hear what you think. The ones that are less technical will have, they're still technical articles because they're based on actual studies, but they'll say things like mortality risk decreases for people that are caregivers. That's not the message we hear, is it? So it's the other side. I think it's really interesting to know there's both, That doesn't mean we don't need to balance and do both. I'm not saying we shouldn't take care of ourselves. I just think it's important to know that. So I wish you enjoyment of those resources. So the next one has to do with our values, our highest values. What do we care about most? They're all related, as you can see. If it wasn't, the last one was about values, right? But this one's about values. And it's talking about the practice of setting a daily intention every day, picking something and setting an intention. And the something I'm going to ask you to pick is one of your, not one of my values, one of your values, something you care about. A value can be anything. I'm going to name a couple. Okay, here's one. This is always important for me, and I always forget about it, and I always have to remember it. Patience. Patience. Okay. I mean, it can be compassion, it can be love, it can be happiness. Doesn't matter. You pick anything that's one of your values. You don't need to stick with these. You don't need to use these on a daily basis. But since you've said one, I'm going to ask you for learning it in class. Why don't you use the one that you just said? Or if you've changed your mind, you said, "Well, I like the one that somebody else said." You like, or another one that you thought of. It's fine to switch, but pick one, just one. And the way the practice would work each day when you wake up, just as your eyes are barely opening, you're barely waking up and getting out of bed, you select or pick one of your values that you'd like to be your value that you focus on today. You can pick the same one every day for years, or you can pick a different one every day. I found that a lot of people like to at least work with one for a period of time, maybe a week, maybe a month, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just pick a value. That's your value, one you care about. And once you've picked it, you don't have to do anything at all, except during the day, as you go through your day, normal day, normal things are happening, you're doing whatever you do. And if anything happens, this comes back to noticing, by the way. Everything comes back to noticing. So you come back to noticing, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit stressed, or I'm starting to notice that I'm starting to feel a little up, whatever it is. The instruction at that point is that you should remember your word, your value. You don't say it out loud. You don't tell anyone else what it is. All you have to do is remember it. Patience, kindness, joy, whatever your word is that's meaningful to you. All you do is remember it. Okay, that's all. And then the last part of the exercise, then you go through the rest of your day. You might have other opportunities to use it or do the same thing again or not. But at the end of your day, before you get in bed or right after you get in bed, you think back over your day in broad brushstrokes. Don't go into too much detail or you'll never get to sleep. But think back over your day and go, oh, did I have an opportunity to actually remember my value? And you might go, yes, I had 3 opportunities and I didn't remember one time. I totally forgot. That is completely normal. Most of us do that. But if you remembered once, then terrific, I remembered. And you might want to notice, how did it feel if you did remember? And then you go to sleep. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to write a journal about it. Just, you've done it. Next morning, you do it again. Next day, you do it again. Here's what I would ask you to notice, though, and this is what I've noticed. When I remember my word, a couple things happen for me. Usually, if I remember my word, whether it's patience or kindness or compassion, my body language tends to change. Let's say I'm starting to feel stressed. I just remembered my word. I'll say kindness. Maybe I remember kindness. I kind of soften. My body language softens. My facial expression probably softens a little bit with my body. I suspect my tone of voice softens. And very possibly the next thing out of my mouth is different than it would have been. Right? I'm not going to talk about kindness. I'm not going to talk about values, but maybe the next thing I say is a little bit gentler. And what I think is so fascinating about this is, so it changes for me, right? I'm reminding myself of my highest values. good thing. The person I'm talking to, let's say if I'm relating with someone else when I'm starting to feel stressed, the person I'm talking to, they're suddenly seeing a different version of me, right? Whatever I was before, whatever tension I was holding or whatever stress, they're seeing a different version. They're seeing a softer version. Probably changes things for them too. Right? So I can't guarantee that, right? Someone else might be on a roll. They're really upset or frustrated about something, and nothing's going to change that. So please don't think that I'm suggesting that our behavior is going to automatically change how someone else feels. But at least there's a chance for them to reset a little bit, maybe. Don't know. It's fun. It's a fun one to try out, and it's really fun to notice, how did this feel for me? And did I notice anything different in my person that I'm talking to? You know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's kind of fun. I'm not expecting any of us to be mind readers and to know how it makes someone else feel, but I'm just saying you can sort of observe that. And I'd like you to try this out. So if you would, please, could you allow, I do this periodically, as you know, allow your eyes to gently close, or your gaze to drop if that's more comfortable for you. And see if you can bring to mind some time within the last couple of days when you can recall that you felt that you were interacting with someone and you were feeling a little stressed. Okay. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you know how they say about pain, where 10 is the worst pain? So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the most extreme stress, I want you to pick a situation or where you were at about a level 3 or 4, just a little bit of stress, enough that you knew you were stressed, but you were not blown out of the water by it. So see if you can remember that situation, remember who you were with, what the circumstances were, what you were talking about, what you were hearing. Just remember what was going on at the time. And now just imagine silently in your own mind that you're right in the middle of talking with that person, and you're going to pause and recall your word, say your word silently to yourself, just so you can hear it. So you're remembering your word in the context of that situation that made you feel stressed. And just notice if there's any way, even in this imagined exercise, can you feel a bit of softening for yourself? You can imagine perhaps how the other person might have reacted to your softening. They may not have reacted at all, but you can imagine that if you like. And then, since this is a practice, imagine that it's time for bed. It's nighttime, you're getting ready to go to sleep, and you're reflecting back. What is it that you want to notice? And I would suggest these things. Notice you had a situation that made you feel stressed. Notice you did or you did not remember to use your word to yourself, to say your word. And if you remembered it, then you can say, well, what was it like? How did that feel? If you didn't remember it, once again, it's a great chance to say, oh, if I have this kind of situation tomorrow, maybe I'll try my word and see what I think. So that's the purpose of doing that nighttime reflection. Yeah. And again, you may say, oh, well, that word was good, but actually there's a different word that would work better for me for this kind of exercise. That's okay too. Just pick something you think would be useful. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes again and just realize that whether you used your word or you didn't in real life, or whether just having it in your awareness is putting you in touch with your highest values. And it's always going to be supportive. It's always going to just remind us who we are, what's really important to us. It seems so obvious that we should remember these things all the time, but most of us don't. It's a practice that we can get better at. The third one, I'm going to ask you to write something down. So if you don't yet have something to write with and write on, could you quickly grab something? And so this is one that always strikes me funny, and I think it's kind of fun. And it's creative. I'm going to ask you to make something up, but before I do, I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. I'd like you to think about your coming week and whether there is a situation or an interaction that you expect you'll have during the week coming up that might be a little bit challenging or stressful for you. It might be that you're going to a doctor's office and you know you really don't like that doctor. I'm making that up. Hopefully you like your doctors, but whatever. Or maybe you know that you're going to see your, you could pretend that you're going to just for practice today, you could pretend you're going to a family gathering and you know that one of the people there is someone that you just assume not see. That's a difficult person for you to be around. They'll generally say something that gets you upset, but you know that person will be there. And let's use that for the example because it's a little bit not what's happening right this minute, but will help you get the idea of what I'd like you to do. So I'd like you to imagine that family gathering that's coming up, and imagine that person's there that you often don't get along that well with. Usually you avoid them because they're difficult. And instead, imagine what it would be like if when you saw that person, and then you could think, what would my positive intention? I'd like for that person to know that I think that they are really a good parent and a really good friend or a really good, whatever they are, something there. What would it be like if my thought before I even saw them is that I want them to know that I think they're a good parent, or I think they're a good person, or I think they're a good friend, whatever you want to think about. What would that be like? As opposed to, there's that person, and I'm going to say, hi, Dorothy, I wish I didn't have to see you. You're not saying that, but you might feel that way. What would it be like if you had a different feeling about it, maybe spoke to them differently? So I like to use that family example. I always pretend I had an Aunt Lucy that always was very critical of everyone in the room. And I wanted Aunt Lucy to know that I thought she was really a very loving aunt and wonderful sister to my mom, right? That was my intention. Before I walked in the room, very, very different way for me to walk in the room than to go into the room thinking, boy, I hope I can avoid her. I think I'll try to walk to the other side of the room. I want to not get anywhere near her. What would it be like if I had that positive intention? What might it be like for her? And what might it be like for me? And this can apply to lots of things. Lots of things. It doesn't have to apply to this kind of interaction, but it's one way to look at it. Another way, totally different. I had a teacher at Stanford say this once. She gave talks a lot. She was a wonderful speaker. So in addition to being a great teacher, she was a great speaker. She said, when I'm speaking to a whole group of people, she said, what I try to do is have an intention of what benefit I hope they will get out of my talk. She said, that's a very different way for me to walk into the talk than just wishing that I wouldn't get so nervous, than wishing that I don't screw up. That's different. My wish instead is for the good, for the other people that I'm with. I'm not sure I explained this as clearly as I'd like to have. You have questions? Okay. What I'd like you to do is to select some situation coming up in the next week. Who knows if you'll want this or not, but pick something where you think it might be, don't know, it might be stressful for you. And see if you can write a positive intention right now. Well, I really want to thank you, all of you, for going through this was a lot of material. Subject is, I group it together as a single subject. I call it positive intentions, but these are a lot of big things. I think the intention for the greater good is just one way I name that practice that we did, but it's really recalling why we're really here. And I just think that's such a gift to be able to dip into. And then the setting of a daily intention. You'd like to try that, take that on, you can try it out and see how that works for you. That's 3 things, that's a lot. And you already wrote a positive intention that you've created. So maybe it's just doing the recalling why I'm really here. Or that, and you could set daily, up to you. May the goodness that arises through our practice be for the good of all beings everywhere, including myself. And on that note, I wish you a really wonderful